And yes, I have been around for a while, which means that, one has a chance to gather information from observation and study and training and practice. And it all goes together to form a toolbox of techniques and practices that I'm able to apply depending on the circumstance. So in terms of issues around the spine, I would suggest that the first thing I'd be doing is looking at getting a diagnosis. So is it a problem to do with the vertebra and the ribs associated, or is it a problem to do with an imbalance of the muscular system in relation to the spine, or is it to do with the energy balance of the organs themselves, how they're working, how they're functioning, and very importantly, how they are positioned. So from that perspective, we might say or understand that organs do get out of position, and that's very common. In fact, I would go further to say that the majority of diseases can be traced back to problems with the position and state of health of the organs. That's another subject. In terms of the back pain, the spinal issues, issues around there, that's the first thing. Find out where it's coming from. For example, it might be a trauma. You've had an accident, you've bumped yourself, there's maybe some bruising, or you've twisted in a funny way. It'll be fairly obvious that it might be a vertebra that's out of its location, what we might call a pulposus, or a rib that's popped out, or it might be something else that might be dull pain in the lumbar region. That could come from, for example, the small intestine wrapped around the adrenal glands. Well, that's a pretty rare thing to diagnose and is not easy. Well, it is easy to me, but not necessarily readily apparent to many people, practitioners and clients alike, but not so difficult to fix if you know what is going on and what you can do about it. Other things that can be issues there is indigestion, for example. Problems with your gallbladder can lead to problems with the eighth vertebra of the thoracic spine, T8. Issues around the heart, lungs, the vertebra in the upper thoracics, issues with the neck that can come from problems in your gallbladder, for example, that can affect the neck, the cervical vertebra, giving headaches, kidney issues, giving headaches at the back of the head, liver issues, headaches in the front and temples and the crown, digestive issues, headaches, particularly in the front and down the sides of the cheeks into the jaw. So everything's connected to everything else. The approach has to be holistic if we're going to understand and treat the cause of these problems. So when you do know and you have an idea, then you need to make a decision about whether you treat just the symptom or whether you're able to get to a symptom as well as the cause. And usually I find myself working on both, a bit of symptom work to release the tension, and then working on the cause to get to the root of the problem so that people can actually go away feeling properly healed. So they're all, in terms of doing that, we've got soft tissue, we've got blood supply, we've got muscle and connective tissue, we've got nerves, endocrine glands, G supply, etc. We're looking at biochemical imbalances, which means dietary imbalances, medicine, whether the medicine people are taking, be it herbal or pharmaceutical, is causing side effects, where that's manifesting and how it can be dealt with. You can't really tell somebody to stop taking a pharmaceutical necessarily, certainly not without their GP involved, but you can deal with some of the issues around it, some of the side effects, and perhaps have a communication with a GP to maybe look for something more appropriate. We can recommend herbs if there are issues in that area that will make a difference. But of course, when we're recommending herbs, we need to be mindful of what the pharmaceutical circumstance is. And there are interactions, we need to be aware of them, and we need to take them into account. In terms of the tools that we have, I use acupuncture. On the spine, I might do a whole lot of acupuncture points that are adjacent to the spine, sometimes in the intervertebral spaces on what's known as the governing vessel. or on the bladder vessel that's either side of the vertebra. I look at the muscle tone in the different parts of the spine and how that's affecting the vertebra. It becomes very obvious once you are used to looking at it. And you can change the tone of the muscle. So to understand what that means is the spine without flesh and tissue and life is just a bunch of bones on the ground. That's not any good to anybody. We want life. We want blood and energy, and we want tissue holding it together. So every day, every moment, that tone is being changed by our living. So we look at what we're doing there, how we affect the spine in that way, and how we can remedy problems in that way. So it's endless, really, and it's really a matter of having a conversation with the person and understanding what's going on for them, what they're doing, what can be changed, what's realistic, what isn't, where you need to go. Is treatment fast? Is it slow? Is it going to take a long course? None of these things you can say in advance. They have to be understood at the time when you're dealing with it. So we go into, as I said, the tools, acupuncture. There's a form of massage called Tuina, which is a Chinese massage, which covers all sorts of things. That's a subject in itself. There are, as I mentioned, herbal formulas that will affect organs and the biochemistry of the body. We go into things like Dao Yin. Well, that's a Chinese yoga, the way of breath. It has all sorts of movements, including Tai Chi Chuan, which is a wonderful exercise form, which works every muscle and connective tissue and organ and joint in the body. So if you want to look at, say, some of the things to do to stay healthy and prevent spinal problems coming, Tai Chi would be a very strong recommendation. Combined with yogas, be it Hatha yoga or some of the breathing yogas, or things like the Dao Yin yogas, the Chinese yogas. There's a lovely little technique that I love to do every morning called joint polishing. It simply means rotating the joint in such a way that it's relaxed and soft and not tightly held together. So it's polishing the joint rather than grinding. So it's done relaxed, easy, and it's done in a way to mobilize muscle and connective tissue. Often we'll have a spasm of some sort that just comes quickly. If you're walking along and suddenly you've done something on your ankle, you can stop and gently rotate without putting energy into the form. You just basically shake it very loose or rotate it loosely. So the weight of the ankle is on the foot is opening the joint rather than closing it. Joint polishing. So have a look at that. You can Google that in terms of Taoist yoga, and that'll give you a sense of what that might be. We teach it, I teach it. People who are near me are welcome to come along and do the yogas and do the various practices that we do. Tai Chi, I mentioned that, as I said, it's every muscle, connective tissue, organ, joint is being beautifully exercised and massaged in conjunction with breath and the movement of energy. As was alluded to earlier by Judy, the consciousness is such an important aspect of this. How we see ourselves, how we watch ourselves. Probably one of the most important things we can do is simply to watch ourselves, to see ourselves in the context of how we're living our life in this moment. So obviously if there's stress and we see that and we want to let go of stress, breathing is the best way to do that. Gentle, easy breath, letting go, releasing, breathing again. Sitting comfortably, up straight spine, feet flat on the ground, breathing from the base, from the abdomen into the lungs, and then releasing. There's a lot more. We could go on forever here, but we don't have that much time. So with that, I will say sayonara.